listeners, thank you so much for all the love and affection that you folks have shown. Thank you so much for also staying back and listening to my podcast, whether it is Much Ado About Nothing or In Conversation With. In today's episode of In Conversation With, I am talking about tech and math and statistics in sports. Today's guest is Francisco. This podcast was recorded over a Zoom call. Francisco is based out of Los Angeles and I am in Mumbai. During the podcast, we talk a bit about his childhood, upbringing, his interest in math, sports, how he started using stats and maths in Fantasy League, and we also talk a bit about his website and how he uses statistical models to predict his fantasy sports leagues teams and players. During the podcast, we also do a bit of to and fro on how people who want to make a career in the field of statistical analysis and mathematics can start. During this podcast, since there are visual aids used, this podcast has also been hosted on YouTube. I'll put the link of the YouTube video in the show notes. So if at some point of time you feel like switching to a video content, kindly click on that link and go back to YouTube. That will help you in maintaining continuity of the thoughts and the opinions that we are sharing during the podcast. Please let me know if you have any other comments or any feedback on the quality of interaction, or if you want the video content to only be there on YouTube and not on Spotify. Your feedback is more than welcome. Now let's get back to the show.
As you know, there are like tons of edX and Coursera and MIT and Khan Academy and whatever on the internet. So you don't need me, but we try to keep it highly conversational. We try to keep it crisp, short, to the point, and we show a little bit of math and how you can do some analysis. If you like it, give us a thumbs up on YouTube and on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and or wherever you listen. For folks who are listening to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you may want to click on that YouTube link for the visual aid portions of this podcast, where my guest would be talking about what he has done, his application, and how does that stuff work that he will talk about. So, without further ado, let me introduce today's guest. Today's guest, who will not be seen on the screen, is Mr. Francisco Avalos Jr. And he is currently working in an EV charging network space as an analyst. He has a passion for data analysis, like me, guilty as charged, and all its facets. For example, he has lent his free time to serve as a consultant in Statistics Without Borders, a not-for-profit where I also spend some time. It's a part of American Statistical Association. Personally, he has a passion for analytical sides of most of the sports. For me, that started off, as most of you would have known, those who have been listening to me for a long time in the podcast, uh, listen to me ramble on and on about Moneyball, and actually you wouldn't believe that there was one meeting where two of us were hanging out and others hadn't joined. So I was like giving Francisco, dialogue after dialogue of that movie. Like I had memorized them all. I've seen that movie like for so many times, Moneyball, that I literally know the dialogue and know the scene transitions and whatnot. So, but he has a passion for the analytical side of most sports, kind of similar to me, with a key interest in basketball and baseball. Okay, these interests have led to some personal projects. So maybe we'll invite Francisco, maybe, who is currently again not on video, to maybe talk a bit about himself and about his fantasy sports involvement. Francisco, over to you.
Hey, Deval. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me here. Thanks for that nice intro. Really well put. Yeah, so as you kind of briefly mentioned, I grew up in Southern California most of my life. I still reside here. I am an analyst for going on for almost 10 years now. currently as a analyst for the EV charging industry. Prior to that, I was in the online advertising industry, so very different, but both with the common denominator of data analysis, modeling and forecasting. Um, yes, as you kind of briefly mentioned, my interests are in sports, specifically in the analytical side of things of sports. I do have a key interest in baseball, and basketball. Um, and I would say though that I have been more focused on basketball in my personal project, developing my project more into like the basketball side of things. It was relatively easy because in baseball there's a ton of data, very like it's too many dimensions to kind of digest. And um but yeah, for basketball the I made display some small like web
Yeah,
application for a project that I have it on the side. I do this outside of my professional work,
yeah,
when I have the time, of course, because there are times where I don't too much time.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I enjoy that stuff.
We completely get it, Francisco. Tell me, or tell us little bit about, for example, in Moneyball, so
Hmm.
the protagonist had a problem. The problem was the protagonist had lots of ambition, but less
Hmm.
money. So he wanted to optimize.
Hmm.
And then he talks about that he is the card counter at the blackjack table, if I'm not wrong. That's a dialogue that Brad Pitt says. Uh, that we are the card counters there and we want to win because we want to use math because we want to optimize the amount of money we are spending in purchasing players.
Hmm.
That's the reason math in sport. So what
Hmm.
was your push? So did you like a lot of sport? Did you like a lot of math? How did math and sport collide in Francisco's life? And when did they collide? What
Oh
age
yeah.
were you doing? And yeah.
Yeah, I can share that. That's funny for me. Initially as a kid, math wasn't. It was one of those subjects that I didn't dislike. It clicked, but I didn't
Yeah.
kind of pay too much attention to it. And sports, that one was a subject that I wasn't too interested in as when I was young. That's funny. I wasn't too interested in, but what kind of clicked for me was first math kind of came closer to me as I kind of started getting a little bit older. Uh, it became I became more interested in it. Later, I through coworkers early in my career, I was invited to play a fantasy football, and that
When
didn't
was
that
this? When was this? When were you invited to play fantasy football?
so early in my career, I'd probably say like mid 2000 teens.
Hmm.
So like 2015, 2016. I was invited to play and I figured why not? There's a chance I can win.
Yeah.
There's a really high chance I won't win. But through that I kind of started seeing some of the like the figures that like ESPN or Yahoo tracked for each player,
Yeah.
which I thought was pretty interesting. And that kind of got that after that I kind of got interested in maybe another sport. So I did like fantasy baseball. And at that time I had already graduated,
Mhm.
gotten my bachelor's. My bachelor's was in economics, mathematics, and statistics.
Oh
So
man. So you
I
are the
had
dude
a
from Yale.
I
From the
wouldn't really say
Moneyball
it.
one. You're the Moneyball guy.
But see, like I said, I had as a kid, math was more just like a subject,
Yeah.
and I didn't pay much interest to it. Through high school and in early college, I saw more interest in math,
Yeah.
and that's what kind of led me into a degree into that.
Uh-huh.
But it was after after my bachelor's and early on into my career that I started getting a little bit more interested in sports. So that I would say then is like that marriage between those two. and that eventually led me to go to graduate school,
Yeah.
which I did in applied statistics and data science.
Wow. Tell us a bit about that. Like, how did your it's very rare with someone's passion or a hobby actually fructifies, because most of the folks, most majority of the folks have their like boring life as a steel worker or some or any life, and then they follow the passion in the weekend, like playing music or sport or whatever. Here your passion helped you, or your hobby helped you steer your career and your higher education. For example, if I really love music, I'll not do a bachelor's in music mostly, in especially in a traditional country, in traditional countries like India and others, where parents will say either become a doctor or an engineer, like follow or a math or economics, like the hard stuff, so that you get a job.
Mhm.
You'll not get a job by doing a bachelor's in dancing and music and recitals and whatever. So we have
Mhm.
been brought up with the discipline of hard work and boring stuff. So how did that help you take up the courses in masters? Like, how did that fusion happen? Did you like apply? Did you go a bit deeper? Do you feel that you can do more with those subjects, or it was just like some it was an inner calling for you?
I would probably say the inner calling,
Uh-huh.
because I know that early on in my college years, I was switching major to major.
Uh-huh.
I initially wanted to be an accountant or work in accounting, and then took up one or two accounting courses, and then wanted to do engineering, and then I wanted to be an economist. But what I realized that throughout all of those, the common denominator was math,
Yeah.
which I was taking. But I didn't kind of see what what kind of like career I can get out of just having a math degree, years after graduating. But I'm like, okay, I still love the material. As I'm advancing through some of these courses, I see some of their applications, and it's really involved. It's really interesting, and I figured, why don't I just do mesh it between that and economics and statistics. And so I figured, if I can do if I can learn some um like nice theories and applications, just the math side of things, if I combine that with two other degrees that I'm really interested in, I think I can open my like door of opportunities later down the line. And that I think that was one like a cornerstone of mine. First couple years after I graduated, I was working as an analyst, and I figured I was interested in doing graduate school, but I didn't know exactly in what.
Yeah.
Um, and I ran into a program that did applied statistics and data science. I looked into it. I looked at the coursework, and I'm like, hey, this seems like more of a advanced version of what I was already interested as an undergrad.
Yeah.
I want to just take it up, and then I threw my hat in the ring and got in, and I guess everything else is just followed through. Um, I really enjoyed graduate school. The projects involvements, the ideas, the
Yeah.
applications, and it just made it revealed just how much um statistics can be applied, or even like the application of a math framework to certain and unique data sets.
So and then so while this was going on, and then by that time you had already got like the 2015 invite for that um fantasy league event,
Mm.
and you had already participated and got the taste of like, did you really like, did you win something? Did you win some
Okay, so
money?
let me kind of go back just a little bit. I would also say that the drive to mesh between sports and my passion for statistics
Yeah.
was the urge to also win in my league.
Ah.
That was a good driving goal. Obviously, the interest in like oh my God, look, there's these players and like there's real data on them, and I can actually use statistical frameworks to help guide me in, who's gonna perform a touchdown or something like that. But um also the fact that in the league that I was in at that time, there's 12 or 10 participants, individuals
Yeah.
who whose drive is just the sport and not necessarily the stat the like the they're not numbers guys. They were just more familiar with the sports.
Yeah.
As with mostly everyone is in sports, they just know the teams who's likely to play this play, or who's a better wide receiver, running back. Um and so I figured if I can if I can use my statistics, my knowledge of that, and if I work it right, I'd be able to beat these guys using numbers, instead of just knowing intimately the sport. So that was the drive, the
Yeah.
to beat the other team members.
Yeah. Like when I was like maybe much later in my career, I was just getting into sales part. I think that was during my tenure at IBM, or just before that. Uh, there was a program up where they taught us how to explain stuff to clients, and they
Mhm.
always told us to learn the art of storytelling. And they always said there's a hero, there's a problem statement, then the hero fights those problems, and then hero is victorious. So that's the reason whenever I see Moneyball, I try to figure out how the storyline is built. So first they expose there's a bit of exposition, then there's a problem statement, then they show a little bit of background of that's Brad Pitt, right?
I think so, if I remember correctly. Yes.
I don't want to name the
Brad Pitt
not Tom Hanks, it's Brad Pitt only.
for Moneyball, you're saying?
Moneyball, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's.
Yeah, it's Brad Pitt, Billy Bean. Yeah. So yeah, so first they talk about his childhood, how he was picked up. He had a full scholarship for Stanford, and he let that go. He was chosen for the sport, and then he failed miserably because he couldn't scale up, and then he was cast out like a leper. So they show the angst of Billy Bean or Brad Pitt. That's one. Then they show him as a struggling coach of a team that he wants. It's like the father, who hasn't been able to succeed. They want their children to get the future that they always dreamt for themselves. It kind of builds that story. So whenever the 100, it's like watching Godfather. The more you watch, the more you go into the mind of the person. Then they figure out why Moneyball, where there's less money, and then why does he want to win? Then maximize. Then the Boston Red Sox happens, and whatever happens. So that's the reason. So
Mhm.
now we have got the full backstory,
Yeah.
the exposition.
Oh yeah. And I would also say that like as time passes by, there's also like new technology development. Like for example, in baseball, they have I think it was like mid 2000 or early 2000 teens that they brought up with they came up with the StatCast technology that even provides even more granular data on pitching, and like the angle of like bat hit and stuff like that. So that provides a lot more, that lends itself
So tell
to
us a bit
more.
about it. So now that you have segued the topic towards tech, tell us a bit about what you did. I know it's a bit of Christopher Nolan kind of a jump, but I do
Mhm.
want to know a bit about that. That we talked about something called as Statcast.
StatCast. Yeah, it's a I'm not too familiar with
Do you have a
uh
website that I can open and show on
how.
my display on my screen? No, I can't share.
I'm
Maybe
sure,
you can
I'm
share.
sure it's just Googleable, but I mostly read up on it,
Uh-huh.
and basically just like a more advanced technology that's used to kind of measure more detailed,
Yeah.
granular, uh like high frequency status of in baseball during the pitch and the batting. So it calculates it calculates, or no, it doesn't calculate, but it provides data on, for example, the speed of the ball, and like the XY coordinates of it's assessing to where the
Yeah.
at bat framework for the batter. It also includes the swing angle of the batter, the velocity of hit, if there was a hit, the angle of hit, very granular data. And it's scary, the amount of like data that provides, because then that could be used for like further analysis, but it's just a lot of data.
Yeah.
And that's for baseball.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, but why I like it is because kind of data, if it's easily accessible to REST APIs or open source access, then it kind of democratizes access to high performance. I remember
Yeah.
Barcelona as a city has a great number one. It has a great football team where Leo Messi and everyone would have played there. Have already
Mm.
played there. Barcelona has a very good other sport culture as well, and its sport medicine is good in that city, and they have put lots of data out on out on open source platforms, so you can play around with that data. So if the data is accessible to teams which don't have lots of money, then they can optimize where to spend. They can reduce player injuries, they can reduce the downtime, and then organize the gameplay a bit better. Of course, the richer team will have access to better computers, better processors, better money bag, and whatever. But yeah, still they can do a little bit of optimization. But tell us a bit about what you did, and maybe how that helped you. Um, how did Because once you knew that you have a passion for bringing math in sports, and now you have, how did you get access to data? What did you do? Then talk a bit about maybe fantasy sport and how it kind of resembles or differs from real sport, and how did you hone your skills, and um, tell us a bit about that journey as well.
Sure. So project, my personal project. So um, I so first and foremost, interest is in baseball. But I started my personal project on basketball,
Mhm.
because I figured it'd be a little bit easier to work with, and then advance later to the baseball. Um, so as I kind of mentioned earlier, interest was to beat other opponents. I started off with once like about a year or two after I joined the fantasy football,
Yeah,
I joined a fantasy basketball
yeah,
with close friends of mine from college. And what I did was I did some uh so during this time when I was in baseball, when I started joining fantasy baseball and basketball, I was already in graduate school, like first year or second year. And I did some sort of like a screening. I wouldn't say like heavy analysis. It was more of uh I'm in this fantasy league, and I have other opponents who don't have the stats background to kind of fully digest all these numbers that ESPN and Yahoo provide. So let me see if I can kind of leverage that easily. So what I started off is just kind of easy ranking of like the players.
yeah,
I kind of just did that manually because I hadn't built anything just yet. That alone got me to like second place in the league, my first year, which I thought was pretty cool because everyone else there had years of experience of playing fantasy basketball. And I figured, hey, if I was able to do this in like manually, relatively manually, not even heavy stats things, and it got me to second place, would have actually built something that kind of not only automates this, but it adds more to this. So what I kind of did is I started, pulling in, finding out sources of basketball data,
yeah.
pulling in that information into like a
Where,
database.
where did you get access to that data? ESPN?
So there's like various sources, so you can get them,
They
and
are
it
like
depends
available
on
for
like.
free for everyone, or is it like a paid source?
So there are some that are paid and there are some that are for free, but it also depends on like the type of granularity you want to look at.
Uh-huh.
Um, and for basketball, you can it goes down to like the player by date by game
Mm-hmm.
uh data. right? And then there's also different sources that provide additional information that those are paid. They're subscribed.
Yeah.
There's some free out there. They're relatively easy to find on Google. And there's others that if you want to supplement to that, it's
But
most
what are we predicting with those data points? We are trying to predict player performance or match outcome.
so mostly at the player level. So what I
Uh-huh.
kind of looking at because of my fantasy, uh, because of the fantasy basketball format that I was in. You have, so let's say we're in a league of two. You're in one team, you have your team, and I have another one.
Yeah.
So you pick a set of, like, let's say 14, 15 players, basketball
Yeah.
players, and I pick up uh another set of 14, 15 players, but they're unique. So like if I choose LeBron, you can't choose LeBron, and things of that nature.
Uh-huh.
And so then every day, every time there's a game, you set up your lineup, which 9 or 8 players you want to play, and then I do the same. So they score, they score field goals. They score 3 pointers, assists, the variety of different categories.
It's a
So
game of skill. So it's because you have seen LeBron perform for last 3 matches, so you know today is a match, or today is a game.
Mhm.
You kind of know how he's going to perform, or maybe you have seen the news that he is unwell, or he is like he's in good spirits, and you feel that the opponent is weak, and he's going to just go for glory today. So it's kind of there's a little bit of data that you have, and then but that data is available to everyone else. So how does your model make a difference?
so it depends on the goal, and my goal was kind of to increase or to have maximal points across all the different categories that we played against. So I believe there's like 10 categories that we play against. So there's field goals, there's free throws, there's 3 pointers, assists, rebounds, total rebounds, defensive rebounds, turnovers, and think I'm missing a couple more. But so each of those categories are points that each of your players kind of contributes to.
Yeah.
And so then what I was kind of do was I was what my goal was to kind of increase, find players who can perform across all the board, or even complement some players. So they might have some players who contribute more to points, and not necessarily to like defensive rebounds or any of the rebounds. And then maybe complement that with players who might not be good at performing points, but can provide a good defense, rebounds, and things of that nature. Having building a model like that, it's really, if you really kind of want it to perform well, it's
Yeah.
very comprehensive.
Yeah.
But what I kind of did initially was focus on points, because one of my kind of thinkings was that uh, if they're producing points, they're very likely to be on the court by the coach. And so then I kind of started with points.
Mm-hmm.
But then because I wanted to go down very to the very deep, like a very granular level, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make predictions by game. So for example, if I have LeBron, what do I forecast the number of points he's going to play for his next 5 games, to see if I should have him um on my um on my lineup. And so what I did is I kind of create this project here.
Would
Just
you
share my
show
screen
us
a
the
little bit.
project?
Yeah. So show you guys this one. So this is just relatively simple. I haven't gotten to updating this in
Mm-hmm.
about 2-ish, 3 months because of just time limitations.
Yeah.
But what you kind of see here is just like a simple web application of basketball,
Mm-hmm.
of my fantasy basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So you see here, there's 3 main tabs. There's predictive modeling, there's free agent screening tool, and then there's current team performance. Defaults to predictive modeling, and it shows a time series. Actually shows different models you can choose from. that make predictions on the particular player that we have, which in this case is Jaylen Brown. And so it shows historical points that were that the player had done, and then it shows the model predictions for the next 5 games. So here you have next 5 games against Portland Trail Blazers, 23 points, and so on and so forth. And then here, this box here, you just see more of like the stats, more like the stat involvement, like just the performance of the models themselves. And then you can kind of just choose which model rendering is
Hmm.
what their results are. Obviously, this looks very wonky.
Yeah, it just goes for the sky.
It goes to this guy, but but this could also be that,
Hey, it's going to stick to the ground, man. Which
but
this is exponential.
this
Okay, so
this could also
exponential. Yeah, this is
this could also like be an indicator that perhaps just looking at the points category themselves, perhaps more of the advanced models might not necessarily be the best.
yeah,
Because here we're looking at just the simple like autoregressive integrated moving average, which is well almost like a bread and butter for time series. Double exponential, not necessarily that good. But then you can kind of
yeah,
look at some of the other players, for example,
yeah.
Stu, Moritz Wagner.
Does
Uh,
that mean that players are not very consistent if their predictions are way off their current performance? Is that they have been very inconsistent in the past, so the data has ingested that inconsistency and is now showing inconsistent results like too high or too low? Is that a measure that of a past performance? Is that a outcome of their past inconsistencies?
Yes, yeah, I would say so because I mean, naturally the players, they might not be giving their all every single game.
Uh-huh.
They might, something like these models don't account for, how they're feeling, that days,
Yeah,
uh, they might say that, they're always giving 100% and they physically might be, but sometimes mentally, they might not be in a state of mind
yeah,
to give 100% performance. So things like that, obviously, that are immeasurable.
yeah.
Uh, these models just try to capture as much as as what the physical numbers say. So relatively simple.
Do you do feature engineering here?
No, not really.
Okay.
Not for the simple models, but for the
So
more
what are the
advanced models.
features here? Have you mentioned features list maybe somewhere? Is it or can you give us like a broad overview of what features you're using for this model?
Well, for this one, it's just the time of points.
Time and points. Okay.
Time and points for the particular player. There's obviously tons of other features that I can use. Like for example, just looking at home games versus
Yeah.
away games, and even away games can be broken down by like region.
Can you
Uh,
plot? Is it possible that uh, if you so this is across one season, right? Or across multiple seasons?
Multiple seasons actually.
Okay. So then this would be like chronologically. So you can like someone can put a band across like season one, season two. Is there a correlation between their points and the money that they have been bought for? I'm just trying to bring some money ball here.
Uh, well, that's probably be an analysis for some other time. Um, that we'd
But
require some
is there
data for that.
player contract data available in public domain? Like how much they've been bought for? No?
I believe there is, although it might be limited, but I believe there is. I do maybe remember
How
something.
many players there might be, just as a rough idea in basketball, who are professionals, who you are tracking?
Oh, I have a ton. I mean, my data set goes back to 2000,
So maybe I don't
and
know.
it's
I
just
haven't
the
been aware of
NBA
American
itself.
basketball. 100,000. How many players?
Uh, I believe I did the count distinct of unique players one time, and if I remember correctly, that must have been like between 50 and 100,000 unique players.
100,000 unique players.
No, between 50 and 100,000. Like 50,000 and 100,000. Like
That's a
in
lot of
between
players. And
those.
how many of them are actually playing and they have been bought for a club and stuff? There would be pretty few people. So we can I can do that as my own project that I can was collate that and try to see if there's any correlation.
And here you kind of have it's kind of loading, but here I'll just quickly share like what I kind of started off with. Um, so here just shows like the players and the categories, their performance,
Yeah,
a heat map of those. So for example, here we said we have like Thomas Bryant, of the sample size of the free agent. So what this does, this data set is showing you players that are free agents for this league, for the Yahoo League, for example, the league that I'm actually in.
yeah,
So it basically tells me, hey, if you need a player that if you need points,
yeah.
Thomas Bryan, he's a free agent right now. You can go pick him up because he can because looking at the current season only, he has what is this weighted average? So an average of 26 points
Per
for every
match, per game.
match. Yeah, and so then even with that, an average of 12 rebounds. So this is kind of color coded, so it's the stuff pops out. So you
That's
can see that
amazing.
Thomas Bryan is like a guy might want to pick up. The next best guy might want to be Mike Haywood, Highsmith, because relatively close to second place when it comes this to Patty Mills when it comes to like points,
Yeah.
but he can get you more total rebounds
Mm,
and so on and so forth. And
yeah.
then like you can kind of sort this according to if you're looking for more assists. So then it color codes that for you. So
Yeah.
assists,
It's a
who's the
heat
top
map
guy?
of showing
Yeah.
multi-dimensional aspect of
Oh
that.
yeah.
That's amazing. So we have two exactly more minutes before our free Zoom
Oh
call
yeah.
ends. And then maybe I'll set up another Zoom call just to finish up. Or do you want to show us the current team performance tab as well?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
If the
This is
connection drops, I'll email you the fresh link. Anyways, let's get going.
Yeah, this is just like just management monitoring for my team.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Looking at my current players. This then just a big note that this is all for the last season.
Uh-huh.
This because currently right now we're not in the basketball season. It's gonna
Yeah.
come up end of this month, but
Okay.
this simple stuff. Just performance for we're looking at field goals here. It's kind of messy, and then the share points of across every week.
Yeah.
And then simple stuff. And then here we're actually looking at a semi model
What is
for
IL?
entry. Injury
Leave, injury leave, maybe. Okay.
uh injury legible or it's an injury.
Okay.
It's an injury designation for
Okay.
players, but this is actually a model.
Uh-huh.
It's a mortality model.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Cool. And you are the host. So would you mind if you start by sharing the same screen? I guess you were talking about IL when the connection broke. We're talking about illness, something. Let me actually
yeah,
look. What does IL mean?
I got it.
IL. Uh-huh.
I think it might be legibility, injured legible, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can see my screen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see your screen. Yeah, we are
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Um, yeah, basically this was an attempt to include injury data because what I realized is that one of my first season in basketball I was doing great, was able to kind of do.
When was this? When was your first season in
I
basketball?
would probably say this was like maybe 2016.
Oh, way back. Mm-hmm.
And so this was the idea,
Mm.
something like this. And this was the idea of like some uh, uh, sorting, a ranking, as you would probably say, for players,
Mm-hmm.
but in ESPN, and their formats like not it. I mean, as a stats guy, what they had was just relatively just a wall of numbers, and it didn't help. But I wanted something more like this. Um, and no, season one, I had this in mind, and I kind of did a manual version of that
Yeah,
using the ESPN their website, and that
yeah.
got me to second place. But then the second season, I was hit with a lot of
So,
uh,
tell me before
issues.
you go to the second season, if I may interrupt, tell me that light bulb moment when you saw something and then just something clicked, like aha. So that makes it work. So, what was that feature? What was that one turning the knob that seemed to do the trick, and then that pulled you in, that sucked you in into the world? There must be something. Otherwise, people usually get bored. So, what kept you going?
I mean, just a passion for stats and just making it work.
So
Uh,
season one was like, were you satisfied with why, what did you improve on season two compared to season one? And why did you improve on that only? What made you choose that improvement? Did you know that something can be done better? Did you find where you're going wrong?
well, the first thing was just getting it to work, like
Uh-huh.
the idea, getting it to work. So I kind of kept it. I really like going into complicated, like really into the complicated structure, like the things of like theories. But and that's been kind of like true for most of my like learning, either at academia or outside academia. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've also found is that sometimes you don't necessarily have to really jump in to like be really in the complicated. Sometimes like keeping it simple and then building off of that works is much a stronger foundation than trying to jump into the really complicated stuff. So that was the idea for me was, hey, ESPN provides like a wall of numbers for players, and I'm kind of sorting then. I just click on like let's say a column here and it sorts. And then I'm like, but what if like that's a simple idea. But what if we can kind of have that into like a color coded and so makes it so numbers pop out. So it's not really complicated. It's just a simple idea. It's
Mm-hmm.
just I just want the numbers to pop out, like in this case.
Yeah.
But what makes this one a little bit more unique was that I added weight to like the categories here. So for example, you have total points scored here. So you see that Thomas Bryant is 26 points across, the just for the current season. But this is not just any like 26 points. This is 26 points that's weighted across by minutes on the field. So if, Thomas Bryant was if the coach kind of put him in the court for a couple minutes, but let's say 10 minutes for a game, this point scored is weighted by those 10 minutes.
Oh, so there is a
It
formula
doesn't
working in the background.
and formula, but the formula isn't complicated. It keeps to the same, it's a simple weighted average. It's weighted by the minutes. So I
Yeah.
figured, initially it was, ESPN just ranking them and just showing you like the minutes or not showing you the minutes, just showing you the points scored. But I figured, let's keep that same idea, but let's weight it by minutes. So it provides kind of value, like how much the players value when they're on the court. Uh,
Hmm.
and so initially it was that idea. Let's start off with something simple. And then I made a little bit of progress on it. And then when I kind of start build the web app that kind of started showing the results, I kind of kept at that same idea and without adding too many complicated things to it. It was just a
Hmm.
chipping at the same idea just
Hmm.
to see how I can advance it
Hmm.
later. Um, and it's later that I started kind of developing more advanced stuff. I mean, I had
Yeah.
uh, the interest in advancing more advanced stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but I kind of kept it simple initially and kind of build off of that
Yeah.
as a good foundation.
Yeah, that's what say in that's what a lot of commentators say in football, the soccer as well. For say if Messi is there or Ronaldo is there or Zinedine Zidane is playing, a lot of people say that give the ball to those players, spend so that they can the time on pitch, they can the coaches can extract the maximum performance out of those star players. So if those star players' performance has to be judged, it has to be judged by the minutes on the pitch. And of course, football, the ball has to be passed. That's the reason all the defenders and center forwards they pass the ball to the strikers, so the strikers can take a shot at the goal in field football, like the football played with foot. So same case here, the amount of minutes spent, that could be a better parameter rather than just putting by the numbers. That also can help a coach or a player decide that this person gets tired out faster or gives more performance over longer time or has stamina or not, or is just like a flash in the pan, does very well for first 5 minutes and then the energy gets drained out. For example, Rafael Nadal, I'm a big fan of Rafael Nadal. He has just announced his retirement. Whenever he goes to the fifth set, usually you call Rafael Nadal the bull because he will tire you out in the fifth set and you can be Roger Federer or Djokovic. He will defeat you in the fifth set when everyone in the world is tired and Nadal is fresh, right? So that those stuff you can minutes performance per minute, it kind of shows the intensity. It's like the power work done per unit of time. It's like what joules per second. So that's a great idea actually. So that's the gotcha movement that per minute,
Per
how
minute,
much
yeah.
intense they can get.
And I would probably keynote that's what makes every sport unique. In basketball, the like the coach has a big say in how he wants how much time he wants a particular player to be on the court. He might limit a rookie, but he also might limit like a veteran because perhaps there might be like injury lenience because of time, but so that's basketball. It's just one simple thing in basketball. For baseball, it's different. Each player has a chance at bat, and so you can't really weigh it by minutes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the keynote I wanted to kind of put
Yeah,
out there.
definitely.
Every sport is very unique.
People do remember. So in my school library, I had the opportunity of reading a book by Coach John Wooden, the legendary Coach John Wooden.
Oh yeah.
And he talked about the Wooden's triangle and how he'll encourage player to wear the socks better and everything. And John Wooden, and then people will also talk about the temper of Bob Knight, and then the Coach K, how Coach K was like a kind, nice soul. And then Bob Knight would be like angry at the player. And now you see coaches running up and down the entire
Yeah.
court, charging at the players as if you give them a chance, they will jump in the court and they will dunk themselves a 3-pointer. That is the kind of energy that nowadays coaches have. Of course, you have seen some chilled out coaches as well. They would be like sitting there doing because they know the players
Yeah.
are performing. There's no point in getting hyper outside the edges. But yeah, you're right that it's the coaches do play a big role in not just in prepping the player, also the game as well as taking the time out and all the stuff. And when the other team is running through the defenses, you just tell who to tackle, how to tackle, when to score a 3-pointer. And the best ones are the ones that are decided by a 3-pointer. Just at the ball is in the air and the hooter has gone off, and then everyone's holding their breath and the ball just goes stuck. Yeah.
Oh
Man.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, every sport, and in subcontinent and now coming to the US, cricket as a sport, it's highly so there are two formats. One is the test cricket, which is played for 5 days, and it tests your entire skill and stamina and whatnot. And then there's a normal 20 over format as well, played for 4 hours maybe. And that's just pure performance, pure speed. So of course, yeah. So badminton, tennis, Formula One racing, everyone has. The point is there's a lot of data. People can marry math with sport, but you would need to know a bit of domain knowledge, and you need to have a problem statement that I want to improve my team. I am doing something. Can math help me do it better?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that could be, just amplify whatever I'm doing. Mathematics is the language of the universe, as they say. People may not believe, but there are things that maths can do that others can't. So you can
Yeah.
hitting a ball in a projectile motion, physics, hit at
Mhm.
45 degrees and it will travel the farthest, and then hit at different angles, then entire parabola and everything. Yeah, so good stuff. Good stuff. So this was season 2. Then this is what version of Francisco's diary, Francisco's spreadsheet. So how many iterations did Francisco's spreadsheet take to come to this beautiful? Was it like second season this good, or when did this Heroku app? How did you come to know about something called Heroku? How did you know about application programming and web design and what those things are not taught in a statistical course? Did you take a computer science course? How did you
Uh,
do stuff?
for me, it was a mixed bag of different sources. But a big portion of it came from graduate school.
Uh-huh.
Um, the my my program applies statistics and data science. It it covers the like the theory side, but it also goes into the application side
Ah,
of
nice.
statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And with those courses on like the programming side of like statistics.
Hmm.
But obviously it's the universe for tech, software, and all the different programming languages is like immense. So obviously can't cover everything. So that's where that portion I kind of led on to myself.
Ah.
Um, a little bit of online learning, a little bit working with friends who are programmers, suggestions and feedback and things like that. I would say that my strengths were uh, historically have been more on like the theory and the application and
Mm-hmm.
less on the programming. But the programming side of things came as a necessity
Mm-hmm.
for my like displaying my results, implementing these theories, and all those, like for example like this web app, Heroku. I think there was like a couple suggestions Google had made for like displaying your
Mm-hmm.
websites,
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of wanted to be a little bit more in control
Mm-hmm.
of, because you can go online and you have some of these templates that they provide for you and it essentially does it all for you. But I wanted to be, like some of like these, for example, some of like these features that you can add, you can exclude, and different cuts of the data that
Yeah.
kind of naturally lends itself to the creator wanting to have more control. Heroku was just one of those that kind of clicked with me a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say it was a walk in the park because there was a lot of times where uh, 5 different iterations was a result of something, a very small syntax. Um, but with time and with effort, you kind of learn some of these languages, kind of get familiar with them. You don't say that you're an expert at it because it'll kind of remember that and beat you down for the next iteration. Uh, it has a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah, but this is this is good effort. So what I did, something not as tech one. I just used Tableau, and Tableau
Mhm,
has like a Tableau public website, tableaupublic.com or something. And
mhm,
there public.tableau.com, and there I put like some couple of analysis of players and teams. And so my math was a little bit behind my master's, which was an MBA. So it was more focused towards business as well as getting money out of stats.
mhm,
And that's where the Moneyball also came into picture. So what I did was I simply put so if the total brand value of um, say NBA is say $1 billion, for example, if the NBA brand is $1 billion, Then what is NBA? Is NBA like stadium or facilities and desks and benches? No, they are the players as well, right? So if they are like players who are getting paid $10 million, $50 million a year, then and there are like 20 such players, that makes $1 billion. That's a player
Mhm.
salary. 20 players across say 5 teams who are paid $50 million. Others would be paid much lesser, but they're like 20 star players. So you add them up, and that's how you get to a brand of NBA. Then so you know that is the expenses. So if you are the head of American Basketball League, not the team. There are a lot of controversies that also float whenever American teams travel to Olympics, because the
Mhm.
coaches feel that there are like too many stars in the team, and it would be difficult to get them all together. Because in Olympics, you're performing as one country against another country, and most of the players have been playing in their own leagues, so they have their own comfort zones. So gelling them together. Anyways, the point here is this: so if suppose you are the head of NBA and you have to run the operations, how much money you need? So you would need money for the salaries for the staff, then you have to pay the players, then you have to run the facilities of all the stadiums. So then that's how you spend. Then one is the all the expenses, and then other is all the income. So where you get the income? Then you do the fantasy league, sponsorships, ads, brand deals, TV channel exclusive content. So these contents will only be there on say Sony Supersport or whatever, Yahoo Supersport, or which channel or which live, and all those syndication and stuff. And then so they're like petabytes and petabytes of content generated every day, which are stored across. So then you will sign a deal with Oracle or IBM or AWS or Google that, hey, instead of you giving us $500 million to put a Google logo, why don't you give us 100 petabytes in your data center for doing all this stuff and analytics? And all the teams will get free analytics on Google Cloud, for example. That's how. So they put a number there. But I was always very fascinated about how the math behind that work, because it's just a humble, simple player. It's just a ball. We're
Mhm.
just dunking a ball. There's a hoop, there's you, and then there's a ball. That's
Yeah.
all there is, to
Oh
be
yeah.
honest. But it's not just you and a ball and a hoop. You know, usually from far away, when from India or from across the world, and people see first is Pursuit of Happiness, where Will Smith tells Jaden Smith that never let people say what you can do, and then he teaches him how to dunk a ball. Little kid dunks a ball perfectly. That's a movement, and then fathers teach the kids. It's an individualistic sport. From there, the journey of becoming a $1 billion brand, from just pure passion and fun and family pastime to a professional league, where the players can't be paid when they are in colleges, so they have to be paid in another ways. They are all the American now. Better than me that the players cannot be paid salaries because they're not professional. They're still called, but they're endorsing brands. They're making money in other ways, because brands want to pay them and they want to catch them young. So the entire journey of good play, good sport, and what it stands for. Entertaining someone, you like a large pizza or a Coke or whatever drinks that I can discuss on this family-friendly podcast. Then you sit back and you turn on the TV and you watch something. It's entertainment. So I pay $20 a month for entertainment, or 10 million people pay $20 per month. That's $200 million per month paid in
Mhm.
subscription to a particular TV channel. Then they sit and watch sports. If there's a red button, you press that red button, you get some more analytics. For that, you pay maybe 50 cents more. That's where Francisco comes into picture.
No.
They're like they're like 10,000 Franciscos working in the back end who are like, I'm not trying to put it down, but the point I'm saying is that's where analytics
Mhm.
drives home money. That's where. So player can put that button, it will put an overlay on the field, and it will show some curves and all the stuff. It's like in YouTube, there's a button called YouTube Stats for Nerds in the YouTube. It shows the real-time data on YouTube. It shows
On
this
the
button called
video.
stats. So have you seen that?
I believe so. Stats on the video.
Yeah. So whenever a YouTube video is playing, right click on that. There's a button called Stats for Nerds. That nerds like me know.
Oh.
Yeah. So I can share my screen. Whenever you play any YouTube video, playing video, right click on the live video, there will be a button called Stats for Nerds. So that's the value of analytics, because one, that's how does analytics make money? One is definitely fantasy league, that maybe you can select if a monkey pulls cards, or a duck or a goose picks cards and says 10 random people, and then there's a gentleman called Francisco who does like a lot of math and selects again 15 players, and then those 15 players selected by a monkey perform better than Francisco. And that's not because Francisco's math is wrong, because in the longer run you have the explainability of when they will bounce back. That's what happened in Moneyball as well, when the team didn't win as per their model, but in the longer run they will win, because the math will always work. It will check out. It will check itself out. So that's the fun part. That's what got me. I didn't, of course, go the Heroku way. I just put stuff on Tableau and put it out there. But this is a good learning, actually. I hope if you are open, if you can share a couple of links. I'll put them in the show notes for people to have a look, or a couple of resources where people can go and read a bit further. That will be very useful for our listeners. Of course, they'll post their comments and feedback and what they want to know and how they get. So if there's a young kid, young boy, girl, whosoever, and they want to get started, and they're not in college, they're like in school, 8th grade, 6th, 7th grade, they have some free time and they want to play around in the computer. So where do they get started? What do they do? What do they
Just I would probably say if they first, if they have the passion, I think it starts there. Having the passion initially, that's essentially the fuel that's going to carry you through from the beginning to end. First, if there's a passion, then there's a good pathway to getting towards almost anywhere you want to go. A second is just working on personal projects that you might be interested in. But I think eventually that will lend itself to kind of going into more advanced programs that can supplement you, because essentially you kind of want to get to those advanced programs, whether it be like a bachelor's, whether it be like a master's, a doctorate degree, or it doesn't even have to be any of those. It could be like a one-time program, but essentially what you kind of want to get is that learning experience. And then obviously, of course, the real world experience itself, because it's only then you kind of really learn what it's like to work on timelines, what it's like to learn on what's deliverable, what's essentially useful for an end user, what's important to either a business or for an objective. Those are really good directional points to have under your belt, because then you can use those for your personal projects. Like, for example, my goal was to beat the other opponents, but then I had to break that question down into little pieces too. Okay, so there's many categories I can use, but let's focus on points for now. And then that doesn't obviously answer all of my question, how do I beat my opponents, but it gets to that direction, because the real world is much more complicated than putting it into small figures. But breaking it down into bite-sized pieces is a good approach. Is something you can kind of start off with. It allows you to eat the elephant in the room a bite at a time.
So one is definitely know what we want to actually know, what we want to do. Then for our passion, maybe reach out to your school teacher if you are in school, and try to understand where you can get started. Little bit, try to practice the math that you do, the sports that you play. See, maybe stay curious. That's the first part of beginning. As you get to college, definitely there's a plethora of information, and do figure out where you want to differentiate if someone wants to get started. That one is definitely what everyone else is doing, like playing the same, because fantasy league would give them some stats on the screen. So use those if you want to still go a bit further, a bit further, a bit in depth, then that's where you can go and figure out, download the data, put it in Excel or put it in Python or R, and then play around with it, and then see which model works for you. Of course, you need to know these models well. These are not like simple mean, median, mode. They are not very
Right.
simple statistics. But can someone start with very simple statistics, very simple stats? Will that be, or this ARIMA and everything is essential?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the situation, but it can. They're not. I mean, they're essentially the base rock of a lot of businesses. Um, they always have advanced statistics, advanced analysis, but those are always paired with the simple side of things.
Yeah.
They're essential. They're like the essentials of analysis.
So that's good actually. That's good point. Tell me a bit about what you plan to do next. You have mentioned that you haven't updated these for the past 2-3 months. So I guess first plan would be to update these ones. But
Yeah.
what next for you? What do you want to do with these models and these websites and these analyses? What do you want to do next?
The goal is still to kind of beat my opponents, because 2, 3 seasons have passed, and since then I've developed this web application and this very kind of introductory
Have you
model.
exposed this web app to other folks? Have you got some feedback from people? What they
Some, yeah, I have. But uh yeah, the goal is still to kind of beat the other opponents. And I guess I would say that the next step would be to refine these models. So there's a lot of reading that's kind of involved. And there's a lot of like reading material out there. Stats heavy on some topics that I haven't even covered as a graduate or undergrad, that require some reading before to understand how it can be implemented. Like for example, I think recently where I left off was there is this type of a method that can be used called general time warp. And it's a method that can be used to kind of um increase or decrease the time series data based off of a base time series, a different time series. So for example, and I was using this, or I was looking into this for the basketball players, so that I can have equal lengths of data, for example, rookie players versus veterans. Veteran players obviously have many seasons under their belt. So that translates to a lot of data. But rookies, they just started. They might just be 2 weeks in, so they might have like 10 games. And so then using some methods like that will allow me to kind of um, almost equal in length, but then I have to understand the method properly to ensure that is it possible? Am I approaching this the right way? A lot of reading is involved.
Yeah,
So the next steps is for me is just kind of refining these models,
yeah. I
improving
guess
on them.
that this was also the point raised in Moneyball, that Brad Pitt says that to the to the scouts, that the problem that you are mentioning, that there are far fewer games, so there's less data. So as a scout, how do you select one kid and not the other? How do you gauge potential of someone and say that, hey, this kid is going to make big, and this kid not, late bloomers or just not having enough data? That's where I guess the movie was about gut response, that I feel that this kid is going to make it large, but that's
Mhm.
where the math came. So yeah, so I guess when there isn't enough data, then maybe still some stats and some math and some, maybe a bit of bring all of them into a boot camp kind of thing, and just create virtual training sessions so that a club can get. I'm trying to see whether this, whatever great work that you have done, how a scout can use it, how people who are looking for fresh talent across universities, across towns and villages,
Hmm.
they have, how can they use this to figure out whether to select one, or if school teachers are looking for talent to be put in the school team, a lot of people who may have good potential. Those data points are actually, as you are mentioning, that there are a lot of papers to be read. Those papers might be covering how to spot talent at a young age.
Hmm.
That could be. That's where math can reduce discrimination, maybe, or bias, maybe. I'll not use the word discrimination. I'll not use the word bias, actually. I'll use the word, because there isn't anything. So humans will try to, I think I'll use the word heuristics.
Hmm.
Heuristics is the right word. Or the rule of the thumb that, hey, he hits the ball cleanly, he's going to be a great player. But he doesn't do a lot of home run, or he doesn't walk a lot, he doesn't score a lot of points, the entire Moneyball stuff. So a lot of heuristics come in a picture in the absence of good quality or sufficient volume of data about a player. And of course, one final, I know we are at the fag end of this podcast. Uh, has video analytics picked up in the US, like tracking the video and player and doing like a 4K high definition video, and if someone is doing, no, sorry, not my mic. So like all the stuff, and do like coaches record the young prodigies and them playing, because I remember fathers and mothers in their handheld camcorders, Sony camcorder, they used to record those in older days. They used to be called handycams.
Hmm.
Where handycam used to be a thing, right? Or am I dating myself by using these older words?
Well, yeah, I mean, now it's just a phone, right? You could just record on the phone.
Yeah, yeah, just record
Um,
a phone and. But can someone, if someone records, like puts two phone across and records their kid, or record the student, is there something that they can use to analyze their body movement? Is there a open source? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Have you done any analysis, or are you aware of some open source methodology where I can ingest a 5 GB video file of a player, and it will identify body parts and motion and know that, okay, his hand is moving too fast or something like that?
I haven't personally. I know there's out there some like implementations of video, like video analysis you're talking about, like video forecasting, or just reading off of like movement, I think. Is
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, I mean, I think it might just depend. It depends a lot, but for I think so that just measures like the movements
Mm-hmm.
visually. Uh but like for example for for baseball, the StatCast already includes granular data. So that in and of itself is data that's very useful for like the models, because one, it's very granular. Two, there's a lot of data points for that, which is what models like. The more data you can give it, the more better um the better the weights that can be adjusted. And so the more closer to truth the predictions will be. Video, I mean, I'm not too familiar with how the level of granularity.
Yeah,
I would say that there is a form of it in baseball, which is the like the angle and the XY coordinates of the incoming ball as it's being pitched. But that would be more, so that's less on the player, and that's more of like the that's less on the batter, and it's more on the pitcher themselves.
yeah. And maybe that will be useful for the trainer and the physio, just to know if they are spraining their ankle a bit more, they're putting a lot of weight on a particular muscle a bit
That could
more.
be.
It's like a
Yeah,
posture thing.
I mean, it could be like you said. It's at least for the focuses that I have for like the
Yeah,
performance. Maybe not necessarily, but like you said, maybe for predicting maybe injuries,
yeah,
or which angle is an ankle is likely to be twisted by a pitcher when out there pitching. That might be something that's useful and explored. Um, that might involve a whole nother set of data, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So
yeah.
finally, before we wrap up, uh, any memories of a great game that you actually predicted like so well that you could have got all the bookies money and all the betting money had you bet like your life on that? You would have made like $1 million in a night. Did you get like everything right, or do you remember any particular game and where your math just won you over the actual match on the TV?
uh no, I don't bet on like games.
I know, I know. So let me rephrase my question. Was there a game where where you actually whatever you predicted went was like bang, 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 right? And you were like, God, this is all just what I wrote, and it's all happening there. Was that like you were like dumbfounded? Like, how is that happening? All your predictions are coming exactly true. That's what I meant. Like, had you bet like $1 million, you would have won everything. Does anything come to your mind that maybe just because of coincidence or just because of good math, uh, that
Oh, you mean like whether if I lean
yeah,
more towards, is it
yeah, all the players
uh
you chose, they did like
superstitious or
amazing that day.
uh I don't know. I mean, I usually tend to lean more for the scientific side of things, so like,
Yeah. How do
stats,
you
numbers.
validate your model? It's like, how do you validate your your short-term wins? Of course, long-term you want to beat your opponents, but how do you
Mhm.
rejoice small victories when you select players and when you change players, when you drop one, you take another in your fantasy league? So was there like one such team which was like not all stars, but they did really well?
I'd say probably constant monitoring, and then judging the results versus what was predicted.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's like relatively simple.
So
Hey,
when was the delta the minimum? When were the results and predicted were exactly the same?
uh,
That's the definition of success, right?
the when the delta is small. Yeah, there's been a couple players where I've had the delta has been relatively close to zero. And then for the like for example, player A, um I predict, such and such for the next 5 games. Delta is really small for the next 2 games, but for the last three, it's kind of off.
Ah,
Uh, and so then, like, that might be a question of the parameter adjustments for the model, or
uh,
it could be that the model itself might not be a good fit
uh.
for a little bit longer term. But I've had like multiple small deltas and a lot more big deltas.
And do you also monitor players who are changing teams?
Oh yeah.
Yes, you're talking about like a game that literally had you like giving all the right options. No. I guess what I was talking about. Have you seen the players whose performance have changed once they switched their teams? Well, like they saw better performance. Why I'm saying this is because teamwork makes the dream work. So we always look at players in isolation. Oh yeah, sure, cool. Yeah, so we'll wrap it up in a couple of minutes maybe. So have you seen like someone perform really better?
Uh Yeah, I mean, they're like my analysis have kind of been focused more at the player level,
Uh-huh.
and not at the team level. I haven't made efforts. I know there's like a lot of analysis out there,
Yeah,
analysts out there, ESPN analysts, sports
yeah,
analysts that make predictions at the team level, but I think that might be too high level for the data,
yeah,
only because each player is individual and they each have their own unique style, and so then
yeah,
that's data that's not being used in that
yeah,
overall prediction.
yeah. So I guess they are so if I summarize here, so those who are really interested about making a career in the field of sports and analytics and math and sport, one is definitely they can start with fantasy league and they can become fantasy league pro and they can win, score more points, beat their opponents. Another career is to become an analyst and maybe at ESPN or do stuff there. Third career is to tag along with a team because there are like 5, 10 teams playing across, say, baseball, basketball, NFL, whichever team. There are like tens of teams playing, 20s of scores of dozens of teams playing. So those teams would have like 10 statisticians working for them. One data analyst, one video analyst, one statisticians. So if a young boy, a young girl wants to become a statistician for Kansas State Chiefs, or say um, a basketball team, for example, so they can also make a career to be part of that sports team. Of course, they would be having exams or entrance, whatever. But this could be a there where they would be analyzing team performance and telling players how can do better. That could also be a career, right? Uh,
Yeah.
no, so yeah, those three are really good. Of course, we are trying to go to the extreme end of the podcast and how this can end. Of course, the humble beginnings is just with simple analysis. So thank you so much, Francisco. I know I promised you 15 minutes, but I'm sorry. The conversation was very fun, to be honest, and
Yeah.
subject I really liked. So we stretched a bit. Any parting words before we close this podcast for our listeners, for our
Um,
viewers?
well, first, I enjoyed the talk. Thank you for having me, Naval. This is very it always feels good to kind of just kind of, I wouldn't say vent, but more just kind of just talk through some of like personal projects. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for letting me kind of share my project and my involvements and passions on your podcast. And then two, yeah, I guess parting words with for everyone. If you have like a passion, kind of go for it. That's kind of like generally speaking. If you have a passion in analysis side of things, find something that a subject that you're interested in. It might not be sports. It could be anything. Anything like that has data in it. Um, or not necessarily data, but anything that involves some type of analysis that you can kind of be involved in,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of familiarize yourself with it, work with it, and you might end up that it might be that you might like the subject, it might, or you might not, or a particular aspect of that focus you might find more interesting than others, and you can kind of, segue your interests from there. But for like overall, whatever your passion is, kind of like make a goal to spread your involvements as much as you can in that, with the whole intention of kind of growing into that, um and eventually, ideally, be successful in that. um those would be my parting words for everyone sharing thoughts.
Thanks again. Thanks for your time, and thanks, dear listeners, for listening to this podcast. Do leave your comments, feedback, opinion at the bottom of the podcast, and we'll read it in the next episode. We'll also share it with Francisco, and we'll get his feedback on your feedback. And if you need any comments, any links, any stuff, let me know. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll beg Francisco to give me some more links and material that I can put it for you so that we can have some very good content conversation going and inspire a bunch of young folks who want to get into this world of math and stats. Let's get started.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of In Conversation with. I hope you liked the episode. I definitely had good fun talking about tech and math and statistics, especially in the field of sports. In consulting world, this kind of field falls under CME, communication, media and entertainment, and has great implications in terms of improving the quality of content as well as driving efficiency in terms of sports analysis as well as sports performance. Would you do us a favor? If you liked our episode, would you share this in your networks and amplify our podcast on your social media walls? Your likes, comments, feedback, reviews, and opinions really help us in crafting our future episodes and in making better content. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can show your support by subscribing to us and by leaving a review. Thank you so much and have a good day.